Day one on the convention was just us in the bathroom taking selfies. We've got waffles and candy, as you can see. We got free on our first night. It was really fun. Me and my mate had a great time. There's stuff in the face. All good. And then
You just think that would have told them something. Yeah, but it still tells you they're going to fight. Still a bit. But fighting he might be there shooting back, he might just be a fireman. No, I'm sorry. If they went in there, I mean, it's sort of his biggest problem is he's not giving himself a great angle. Yeah. If he showed some military targets or hits military targets and they've gone into the areas that they're having the actual what they want to be rushing. Either been when it starts going pear-shaped, you can just stop. We killed it. We sorted out this dispute here. We'll keep it quiet. Now we'll start talking about the long-term situation. Because the Ukrainians already don't like him on the Crimea.
I couldn't find you for a second. I should have known you were over there.
yeah, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Summer geek girls.
Never mind that, you can get MILF.
If only I was a MILF. Or you can get, the witch. I still really love the vampire one. I don't know why. The monster girl needs seed. With thick water.
They rather like it.
That was all done digitally, so there is no painted cells.
That's a good film, just a fun fact.
What the fuck is it?
It's very visually pleasing.
So many Akira cells.
I've watched it twice. It was just visually pleasing.
I think if I framed every single one, I could plate my house.
I was talking to you
with
about
them.
that. That's I did.
I've got a sequence, so you know when literally code. So you know when
I do still go out with them like they're often something, and I will trust you. I will trust. I mean, like a pack or something. I'll go out. But...
Oh, damn it!
You can take it back now.
Do you see this bubble tea?
Yes, bubble milk.
Oh, you're right ahead, mate.
Yeah, that's one thing to get.
that's probably far too many.
Just everything about Kirby's cute. So,
This only happens once. And I'm so glad it's happened.
Hi, sorry, can I just get that one, please?
What is that? Yeah, of course. Let me remind myself how much that one is.
I think it was $2.70. I want to say.
$2.70.
Yeah.
Is that
Card, please. Oh, that is cute. If I have any money tomorrow. I'm going to open this over here, actually.
Final frequency. Who? Yeah. Look at the little key rings, oh. I have no idea who they are, but
That's 02.
cute as fuck.
That's they're Haiku and that's 02. I know that much.
That's the sports anime, I don't know much.
Yeah, it's a volleyball one.
Yeah. Look how cute they are.
I know the little Genshin ones. I'm planning to cosplay. I think it was that character I'm planning to do soon.
That's alright.
Child.
Last night there was that weird factory festival thing where everyone
Oh yeah, it's just like a cute like
Just realised I hadn't checked through the cheaper.
I'm gonna one of these.
You good?
Yeah, it's cute.
Yeah.
Gay. Yeah, it's a guy in the purple. Gay. But right. No, these, right?
Yeah.
They're clips. I thought they were earrings. I fucking wish they were earrings, right? Because that's a girl and that's a girl.
Yeah.
And it's from this anime. It's over there. Got something on her. I know. I'm very good at names.
I know you're very good at this.
Oh, but look, it's got like a little bottle. Cool as fuck. Sorry for hitting you in the head.
No, that's because my hat's massive. I can hit you through that.
It's fine.
Also, whatever I don't finish with this before the competition, you're welcome to finish it.
Grand. Ooh, sorry guys. Sorry.
Just a little bit of cool that way, I guess.
Okay, can't go wrong. So what did they tell you what to do?
So they told me move this way, and in my mind I got right, follow the person in front of me, and that's as far as I got.
Okay.
So my idea is to follow someone who looks like they know how to do it, but I did not take in any of what they told me. And I know I'm in 5th position.
That's fair. Run! I'm having. This
What
is
is
mine.
it? Oh, no, that's what Christmas is doing.
No, but it's a manga. Oh my god, it's the
Oh, I'm singing. How
yeah the music.
ultimate.
Yeah. Look at the little
Wait,
squeaky.
That was right over there.
Oh, you open it? Yeah, that's what I did. Little rings.
You want to try this?
Yeah.
You can finish off if you want. I can't tell if I like it or not, but I got really fast I needed.
I don't know. It's
I don't
weird.
know, but I also like, if I throw this in the bin,
You're
it's
gonna
wet
wish.
the bin.
You're gonna wish.
So I
about
feel
that.
like I should throw it out, like throw the liquid outside.
Okay. Oh my god, look, stickers. You get that? I get this. Black ponytail clip. Wait, what
It'd be
animal?
fun to just chuck that in the bin, or will the liquid kind of be an issue?
Throw it in the bin.
Huh?
Throw it in the bin. Let's play a thingy. Wait.
That looks cool.
There's one.
Well, they have 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. I just grabbed these. I want to see what they are. I know the wigs. I'll go through this footage later and figure out shit.
Record me.
Yes, you are. My phone's gonna die on me. Fuck you, phone. Go through. No. Just triple with my own fucking 2 feet.
Yeah, but one drink of water.
I don't know if I do want to drink, but I don't want to drink water.
I can't remember. I was thinking about drinking, then I changed my mind.
Is that? I want to drink, but not water. Give me fizzy.
I like a Fanta.
Amazing. I know I'm not going to buy anything quite yet because I'm going to save the rest of my money for tomorrow.
And I have no money.
I know. To be fair, I swear, like sometimes, on occasion, does our wage come into our bank account on Sunday, or is it always Monday?
Monday. Well, 12 o'clock at Sunday night.
Oh, okay, so we get tomorrow.
That's the best we got.
Thank you, yours is lovely. Oh, did you actually make it?
Thank you. It was many mental breakdowns.
Yeah. That's Gacha Games for you.
That's got
Mental breakdowns, but looking fabulous.
No, because you get this character at the beginning anyway. They're a given character. Just I have C1 Lisa and I want C6.
I've seen people spend stupid money on Gacha.
I have yet to spend money on that until winter comes.
And
Then
then
I'm fully
They're galaxy lenses. Try and put sparkles in this one. I'll get sparkles.
Masquerade! It has been a bit of a long time for some reason. Can't think why. Let's not go over that. So, how many newbies do we actually have in the audience before we begin? Is this your first MinamiCon, anyone? Hands in the air? Oh, right. Well, welcome to MinamiCon. Hope you've been having a good time. As you haven't attended our masquerade before, I will just give a brief outline of what's involved. What is going to happen is we will have a selection of lovely people who are going to come through in costume to put on a show for you here tonight. This isn't some kind of official or serious competition. Our panel of judges will be judging on a list of categories that they are going to make up at the time once they go on to do their judging. This is meant to be a fun contest, as you will discover from the prize awards when they're given out. And on that topic, I wish to introduce our judges for the evening, who are Storm, Pez, Phil, and Tav's friend. aka Christian. Yeah, sorry for you first timers, that is a bit of an in-joke. I do apologise. The rest of the thing is a bit more accessible, so I do apologise for that. What the hell was that ominous rumble? It's like nothing can possibly go wrong. Touch wood. Yeah, let's not change it. Right. So, audience, are you ready for a show?
Yes!
Audience, are you ready for a show?
Yes!
Okay, so without further ado, I will start introducing our cosplayers. First up, we have Neko Raven as Sombra Cat from Overwatch. I didn't see you on the payload. Up next is Street Angel as PGSM Sailor Luna. She has remade her first ever MinamiCon cosplay for this time travel theme. The original was made by her mum, who is sadly no longer with us. Though she did make the accessories. The new version uses the tail and accessories that are now 14 years old to blend past and present. This cosplay is in honour of her mum and dedicated to Minami, which has always felt like home. Genuine MinamiCon history, thank you. Right, next we have Nez Proxy as Emmett Selch from Final Fantasy XIV. Big mood energy going on here.
Selfies as I didn't record it all, so here's me with my little blue ears. Here's me, my friend dressed up, my little Stitch. Here's us on our last day, having a bowl of chips and having a giggle. Sorry, my Stitch fell on you, I'm sorry. But also, I do need to make a bowl.
I also need to make a bow soon. In about a month.
So that's it, triggers or daggers? What was this in the middle?
Blades, triggers, and bows.
What's triggers?
It says triggers in between blades and bows.
Yeah, what is triggers?
Triggers, I guess like guns.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's why I thought it was
There are certain ones, like, especially if they're quite realistic, you have to like make it
CG,
up with
yeah.
an orange tip and stuff, so they don't think you're just.
Fair.
Sorry, just open the thing you sent me earlier with the quote.
We make relevant memes in this house.
I can't wait
Yes.
to just send that to a friend with no contact.
Hello, I'm a friend. Let me know
Yeah, but you know
contact.
the contact.
Oh, I will pretend I don't know
We
the
had
contact.
some absolute dude bros at breakfast this morning. It was so funny because there was just one really wholesome dude bro and everyone else was terrible, and like the wholesome dude bro was trying to like keep all of his friends in line. So his friends had like left their drinks down there, so obviously the staff had cleaned them up.
Yeah.
And like basically they were complaining about it, and the wholesome dude bro was like, guys, it's their job, like stop yelling at them, like you're the one who's left your drinks out. Like it's just so good.
Oh, you didn't bore him.
Oh yeah, see, I figured that was the case. I figured there were people who just didn't know that they didn't have to stand in that queue. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. People will filter in when they want to. Is this, oh, microphone! I'm gonna use a microphone because I wrecked my voice last night at karaoke. Actually, we wrecked our voice last night at MinamiCon, screaming like banshees, and then made it worse at karaoke. So we are gonna use this. Thank you everyone for coming to my panel. I know Sunday afternoon panels is always the worst because everyone's super hungover or just wants to sleep, so I really appreciate it. We're going to be talking about weapons in cosplay, covering bladed weapons, weapons with triggers, and also some bows. So a special shout out before I start. This panel was originally created by myself and two of my friends, who are Cassie and Kalina. Kalina's picture has disappeared since. I don't know what happened to it, but don't worry, she's fine. We made this panel originally for Anime Boston in the States, and it was just quite a useful panel, we thought, so I brought it back over here. So, you know, I can next slide. Right, so weapon safety is what we're going to start with, because the thing is, you want to have a prop, you want to take it to a convention, you want to pose with it, you want to look awesome. But before you can do any of that, you actually need to make sure that you can bring your weapon to a convention, right? Now this is less so an issue at conventions like MinamiCon, but this is definitely something to consider for like the MCMs at London and Birmingham, is that not all conventions will allow you to have weapons of any material. So for the majority, metal is just straight out, though I have been to conventions in Italy where people are just walking around with metal weapons, horrifying. But also some major conventions actually say you're not allowed wood or MDF for your weapon. So if you're making a big sword, wood and MDF are really good for things like that, but if you can't bring it to a con, you're a bit stuffed. Same thing with if you're using metal rods for the inside of your props. If they're visible, some conventions will just go no. Size is another issue. A lot of conventions, especially for the masquerade, don't allow props over 5 feet. So this is something to consider if you're like, I'm going to make a giant buster sword. It's going to be amazing. You don't want to get stopped at the door because your weapon is absolutely too big. And then there's an issue of weight and practicality. Now this is something that doesn't factor into weapon rules at conventions. No one's going to stand there with a scale and ask to weigh your weapon. But if you're going to a con and you're going to be there from, I don't know, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at least, do you want something that weighs a ton that you have to carry around and then also carry your con bag and walk around with as well? And practicality-wise, do you want something that is actually going to be so big that you're going to struggle to maneuver? And this is going to change by con, right? If you're going to an MCM, those are massively crowded. You're not going to want to bring a super big weapon that is quite fragile. If you're at MinamiCon and you know that you can shove your weapon in the back of whatever room you walk into, it doesn't really matter. You can have as big as you want. But I mean, the corridors here are smaller, so there's things to consider. And then lastly, on weapon safety, for things that will be in con rules, is making sure weapons are non-functional and legal. So bows are really problematic for this. So I've got my bow here, my costume today, which I built already curved. So bows, which we'll go into later, basically are just a stick that you curve, right? So if you make it already curved, it's gonna look good for pictures, even if you're not allowed the string. The string here is super loose. It cannot fire. but actually some conventions wouldn't even let me in with the string, so I've made that so that it can come off and just actually have the bow itself. That's something that you need to think about. Some conventions don't allow you to have guns that have triggers that you can pull, even if it is non-functional. You literally cannot put anything in the barrel. If you have a moving piece on it, they'll be like, absolutely not, get that out of here. So before you plan your cosplay, just check what convention you're planning on bringing it to and check the rules for it. So building the con-safe weapons, materials. So I said metals are out, wood tends to be out for a lot of things. So what can you actually use? Thermoplastics are fantastic for lightweight weapons. You can buy it in sheet format, things like Warbler, Thebra, and Wonderflex. You can buy it as beads, so Friendly Plastic, Thebra Pearl, and Instamorph. And they even come in transparents if you're trying to be super fancy with your weapons. Warbler Transport and acrylic sheets are kind of the main materials for that. And these are really good if you're trying to make detailed weapons. You can use it for small weapons, large weapons. So here my friend Kalina's made her claws for Alan out of thermoplastic. These were great because they were super lightweight, they didn't stress her fingers, and also because they're thermoplastic, they're con-safe. Over on the far side, that was a very old armor of mine for Corin from Fire Emblem, which is made out of foam and PVC. PVC is a sheet-based thermoplastic, which is really cheap, because that's the other thing with thermoplastics, they can be quite expensive. But if you can get access to PVC things like 4X, then you can make quite large things out of quite cheap material, and these are really lightweight, so they're good to use. Other materials, PVC is a fantastic, so Sintra is the other brand, I forgot that, and also PVC rods, so the stuff that you get at B&Q, right? If you need a really big weapon, even if it's not a staff weapon, putting a PVC rod inside it is always going to be a good shout because you're going to give it a lot of stability. It adds basically no weight on it all. And you know you're going to be safe with that because it's literally stuff that's used in plumbing. So there's absolutely no problem. And wood, I love wood. I make so much out of wood in MDF, but then every time I want to go to a con, I'm sitting there going, okay, can I actually bring this to this con, blah, blah, blah. So it's something that, like, it's not that you can't use it, but you need to definitely make sure that you know where you're bringing it to, because the worst thing is to get to a con and then just have your weapon taken away from you and you're like, wow, I hope I get it back. Who knows? So this is a sword I made out of wood. The Princess Mononoke dagger is wood and then covered in thermoplastic, and of course the Soul Eater scythe is PVC, because any long weapon, staff-based thing, yeah, just shove PVC in your sorted. So foam, again, is one of the best materials ever because it is literally the cheapest. EVA craft foam tend to be the standard things that you see people use for props. Floral foam, though, is great. Here is a sickle that I made out of floral foam. You can sand it down, you can cut it really easily, and then you can cover it with whatever you want, and it is super lightweight. So for things that are really big, highly recommend grabbing some floral foam. It is dirt cheap. Also polyurethane and expanding foam. These are really good for if you've got a base, so you've got your PVC stick, and you're basically trying to build around that. There are hazards with polyurethane foam. You have to do it outside. The dust that comes off of it can be quite toxic, but it is a really good lightweight material, and it can get knocked into and you're not going to have a problem with it. Like some foam things will start to dent if there's too many people around you and they knock your weapon, whereas expanding foam is just like, I don't care, nothing will happen to me ever. And then lastly, just some other things you can use. People forget that cardboard and paper mache are perfectly well serving when it comes to weapons. Yeah, is that cardboard?
Yeah, I put it together this morning.
It looks fantastic. Cardboard is great because it's super lightweight, and if it does get broken at a con, you just remake it because it costs basically nothing. And it's good to recycle your cardboard. But things like plaster bandages are fantastic. So this, my Blaze Blue sword there, the really long one, that's wood and plaster bandages. And you can get really nice shapes with those. The downside is it is heavy. So that's another thing to consider. Clay and model magic are really great for adding details onto weapons, but you wouldn't want to make anything out of it as a base. And then if you want to get super fancy, resins are obviously fantastic, and you can go to any scale you want with resins and epoxy casting. You can make blades out of that, you can make whatever, but that is definitely not cost efficient. And lastly, fabric. Fabric does have its place in prop making. You can use it to cover armor, you can use it to cover spearheads and axe heads. My Fenris axe up there is covered in fabric. I would have preferred to use a shiny material, but it was kind of a last minute job because Anime Boston said, no, you can't have a wooden axe. And I went, oh no, I didn't look at the rules. So we made that in a couple of hours real quick so I could actually have a weapon because I did not do what I told you guys to do. Oh dear. What's happening? Is it frozen? No, that's back.
It's just not slide 7, it hates slide 7.
Okay. Do you want to exit out and then we'll just go to the next?
Oh.
Yeah, that's definitely not what's next though. I mean, I love it. It's a great picture.
That's the next one that's coming up.
Can you exit out and just check? Excuse us while we have some technical difficulties.
Yeah, slide 7.
Okay, well, I know what. Oh, okay, yeah, slide 7 of practicality anyway. Things when you're making a con-safe weapon, you want to consider height restrictions and you want to consider whether it can come apart. That Sailor Moon staff that I had is exactly 6 foot. And I went to a convention that was like, you can have a 6 foot weapon. And I had like 8 staff members come up to me and be like, you can't have this weapon. And I'm like, it's 6 foot, what do you mean I can't have this weapon? But that actually breaks apart into 4 pieces. So all I did was carry it around in 2 separate pieces. And when someone stopped me for a photo, I'd be like, give me a second. Okay, there we go, I'm good. And it is something to think about as well. If you want a heavier, big weapon, you don't have to always carry it around the size it is, right? You can just split it in half and it will make your life so much easier. And modifications are important to think about as well. Like, again, you want the ridiculously sized weapon. Scale it to your body, right? It's going to be easier for you and it's going to be a lot less stress and it's still going to look good. If it's a 6 foot weapon and you are really like not close to 6 foot, like scale it down, make it 5.5 feet so you don't hate yourself. People are still going to think it's cool. So yeah, now we'll go back to slideshow.
Which it hates.
I don't know why it hates that slide.
Despises slide 7. Yeah, it doesn't like that.
That's fine. Just click on to the next one.
To the gun.
Yeah, now we're going to talk about actually posing with weapons. And the first thing we're going to talk about is posing with guns. It doesn't like the gun. All right, and a gun. Next slide, please. Oh, geez. There's always something. Right, so this is a basic thing of an anatomy of a gun for a pistol and a revolver. You have a rear sight, you have a front sight, you have a barrel, and you have the thing that you have to pull if you want it to go pew-pew. And then you have the bit that you hold. And that's basically all you really need to know about a gun. But this is kind of all the terminology. So then we have for the rifle, it's basically the exact same thing. It's just going to be a long boy rather than a short boy. But the guns are the same. So what type of guns do we have in anime that we might be making cosplays for? We have handguns, like pistols and revolvers. We have long guns, like rifles, assault weapons, shotguns. We have fantasy and sci-fi guns, like a shoulder cannon, laser guns, ray guns, and then other, right? I know everyone here will probably cosplay free at some point in their life. There's no hiding it. I'm not going to hide it. Water guns. We love water guns. I'm not going to say the Homestuck joke. I'm going to leave it there. So how do you hold a gun? So you need to support your gun, right? Everything has a recoil. And you need to imagine that what you are holding when you're taking pictures and posing is actually meant to be a real weapon, even though everyone knows it's not. So the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to hold underneath the gun. You definitely don't want to cross your thumbs because you're going to break them. And the correct grip is basically just having one hand on the grip of the gun, and the other hand over it, and having your thumb and finger close to the trigger, but not on the trigger, because if you have on the trigger, then you are taking a shot. And that is the correct grip, as demonstrated. And trigger discipline is really key, because if you're cosplaying a character with a gun, the character probably has like experience holding a weapon. So the one thing that's key is that unless you are taking a shot, your finger is never on the trigger. So here's my wonderful friend Cassie in her casual Shiro cosplay from Voltron. And on one picture, you can click the next because it should have all circles come up, because the animations are good. One picture you can see she's got her finger above the trigger, next one she's got her finger on the trigger. And it's a minor thing, but you know, you're spending a lot of time getting into cosplay, making your prop really nice. you want your pictures to look convincing, right? And it is things like that that really make or break cosplay pictures sometimes. So even small things like that. So yeah, unless you're shooting, no finger on trigger.
Does it hate you again?
Oh, please.
It hates you again. We're
Crawling in my skin.
There you go.
Right, and then stance. So yeah, here we have left good, right bad. When you're actually aiming with the gun, you do want the gun to be out in front of you, and you don't want to like be chicken arming it, because that's not a good position to be in. You want to always be relaxed. I think that's really the key thing when you're posing with props, is you want to be in a position that looks relaxed and looks natural, because unless you are being a dumb character who's holding a stupid weapon for memes, you tend to be someone who actually knows what they're doing. And this is a good example of the difference with the gun pose. And then we've got different angles as well. And you can see the A-frame profile view actually works quite well as a horizontal image if you're getting a photographer to take that. And then down here you've got the Chapman-Lieberman stance, which is basically you've got one hand on the grip and the other hand actually holding the barrel. And that looks really good for photos. It really does, because you're adding depth. You can take a step forward with it. You've got a lot of composition of your body, and you've got the composition and dynamics of the gun as well. So posing correctly with a rifle with a handgun does actually look really good. And then we've got posing stances with long guns. So here is my friend Cassie, definitely trying to call out her other friend when they were just trying to play an arcade game. If you click again, it should show the little circles. Because this guy has his arm way too high. It's a very unnatural stance. And if you click again, it will show the circles for Cassie's stance, which is a much more closer position. She's bracing the gun against her shoulder, which is another key thing, especially when you're shooting a long gun. But the other issue is that pose looks okay, but the other pose for long guns is actually just fully laying down on the floor. How many of us actually want to get down on the floor in our cosplays? I ain't getting down in this, I'm not gonna get back up. So, you know, that doesn't really work, right? You do have to take kind of a standard normal pose and change it to make it so that it's still gonna work with your costume and actually look good as a photo, because yeah, for a long gun, you're gonna be on the floor, but no one is gonna stop you at a convention and be like, can I take a picture? And you're gonna be like, give me a second, mate. Right, like, it's just not gonna be good.
You've got a front support as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's the hand again in the Chapman-Lieberman style holding the barrel.
Oh, is it hitting you again?
Oh my god.
Oh, okay,
And then you got the ready position. So again, if you're not ready to, if your character's actually just, you know, posing like a cool person, having the gun up, perfectly fine. Having the gun down, perfectly fine. Again, as long as the finger's not on that trigger, it's going to be a good pose regardless. And then aiming. Aiming is really difficult for pictures, actually, because obviously if you're aiming properly with a gun, it's right in front of your face. But we don't spend up to an hour doing makeup in the mirror in the morning to put the gun in front of our face when we're trying to take pictures. So always, like, it's better to just lower it slightly, put yourself in the right position, and then be like, right, but this looks dumb for a picture. And you can lower it or you can move it to the side. So the key thing is always to just kind of alter that proper position in a way that allows the photo to be good, to show off your costume, but also not ruin the fact that you are a badass character who understands how to use the weapon in their hand.
It hates you.
Do you know what, just keep the slide normally. It doesn't matter if people can see what's coming.
Okay, cool. So, this one.
Yeah, so here are a few other pose ideas of what you can do when you have a long gun. So this Mami cosplayer here, she is just absolute vibing with the gun resting on her shoulder. That's a really nice pose.
It really hates you today.
Oh, you know what, it's fine.
That's
I get
just
it.
The slide. That's
Yeah.
just the slide.
And then, yeah, it's fine. We'll just go to the next one.
There you go.
Let's talk about archery. I hope archery likes me a bit more than the gun section did, but you know, at this point I'm not holding hope anymore. We used this panel at like 8 different conventions and never had this problem. Gosh, I love arrows. Okay, take it away with the archery. So there's a bunch of different types of bows. The normal things that you're gonna see for cosplay, they're gonna be recurve bows, like the one I showed you before, or they're gonna be long bows, which is, you know, just a giant arc with the string. If you're doing like a lot of maybe the more modern video game, or no, even Lara Croft and like Alloy and stuff just have recurve bows. They've just recurve bows with a lot of extra shit on them, right? You're gonna be making a recurve bow, most likely. It's always gonna be a recurve. But in fantasy and things, you'll get more long bows. And here's the key thing, as I said before, is that you need to break the tension. You can use like proper bows as props, right? As long as there is no string and no arrow remotely near you. But the problem with that is that proper bows that aren't like the one that my friend Cassie has there, aren't actually gonna look good, because the whole point of a recurve bow is until you string it, it's just like a stick. So using real bows as like a prop that you've got like on your costume but you're not posing with, fantastic, but actually trying to pose with one at a con, basically impossible. But the trick is with anything is make sure your bow physically cannot be used in any capacity. And then we have cosplay poses versus correct poses. There's actually no reason for this slide to be in here other than it's funny. But my friend here in her Katniss cosplay is actually showing a proper pose, right? Your arm that the bow is going to be in is going to be fully extended, and then you're going to have basically the arrow knocked on the string between two fingers, and your elbow is going to be up. Other than that, there is actually no proper way to shoot a bow and arrow. You can be in whatever dumb foot stance you want, as long as your arm is straight and this elbow is back, your shot will always fly true. Because I do combat archery, and when someone is running at me with a spear and a shield screaming, "Kill the archer," I am just gonna shoot from wherever the hell I am. And so if you see all these things like, no, archery poses, you have to be in your triangle stance, you have to be perfect, none of that is important. As long as that arm is right, you are going to look like you know what you're doing with a bow. And obviously making sure that the bow is facing the right way. It really is. It is just keep your elbow straight and keep that back arm back, and the rest of your body, you can be doing whatever you want. You can be sitting down, crouching, whatever, it doesn't matter. That is the key to looking good with archery. And then we're gonna go on to the actual best part of this presentation, which is talking about swords. Right. Nice. That took a second to load. So what kind of swords are we gonna be seeing when we're making our anime cosplays? A lot of Japanese blades, right? So Kenjutsu and Kendo, you're most likely going to be familiar with the katana, but there are a number of other weapons that characters might have. A tachi is just a very long katana in case you got really short arms and you need that extra length. A wakizashi is just a smaller version of a katana in case you're feeling lazy and you don't want the full katana. And then you have shorter daggers. The most common one that you'll see is going to be the tanto, because basically, if you've got shows that have samurai in, they're always going to have a katana, a wakizashi, and a tanto in their blades. Like if you see anyone with 3 weapons, it's going to be those 3. But also you've got bokken and you've got shinai. Do not recommend going to conventions with bokken or shinai, just as a rule of thumb, because they are... Pardon? Yeah, I mean, Minami, no one cares. We don't even have cosplay rules, whatever. But like if you go to MCM and you're like, hey, MCM guards, here's my weapon, they're going to be like, no. So just like, the other thing I always caution this with is like, if you have that weapon at a con, you might be safe. You might know not to swing it at someone because it's a giant block of wood at the end of the day. But if you don't have total vigilance over that weapon, you don't know who else might grab it, right? Like I've been at a con before where I've had a weapon in my belt, and I've had a cosplayer run up to me, and before I could even react, take my weapon out of my belt and just run and go try and fight his friends with it. And I'm like, if that's a weapon like that, I know with me it's safe. I'm not going to swing it at someone and break their kneecaps. But if someone takes that from me, or I leave it somewhere because I'm being dumb, right? Like, then that's automatically much more of a dangerous weapon. So I just caution from bringing them in general to cons. I have been smacked in the head with a bokken before, and it really hurt. It was very painful. So yeah. Okay, so let's talk about handling. I actually have a katana. I'm gonna grab my katana. Right. The trick is, if you want to look like you know what you're doing when you're holding a katana, don't hold it like a baseball bat. Your thumb and your finger will automatically make a V when you are holding a cylindrical object. And that V is, no, I'm good, I can do it one-handed. That V is the most important thing to maintain, because that is showing that you've got the correct torque on this action. So you never ever want to hold it like you are swinging. You always want to hold it here. And this is just a frame of reference for posing. Oh my god, my flip-flops. I didn't realize I was wearing flip-flops in these pictures. Standard pose for Kenjutsu is called Sankakudai, which is a triangle stance. So you've got 1 foot in front, 1 foot in the back, and if you cross them, they would meet at a point, and then the blade is here. But this is a really shit pose, isn't it? Like, someone's gonna come up to you and be like, I want a picture, and you're gonna be like, I'm ready, right? And they're gonna be like, wow, that's the most boring pose I've actually ever seen. So even though it's correct, like, let's see if we can spice it up a little. So yeah, action poses. In Kenjutsu, we have a number of starting poses that you can do. So this is normally where you would begin if you're doing a drill. But we have various forms such as hasso, and then pointing to the side. I'm not going to go through all the Japanese names. Back, and then also down. And these are going to be keeping that same hand motion, but they're going to be a lot more interesting to look at, right? Having your sword up here is a lot more interesting because you can show off your costume than having your sword here. The same with the one to the side. Obviously, you've got the space that a con, having it posing to the side is nice. The one to the back looks cool if you've got a photographer who knows what they're doing. Otherwise, it looks like you're holding an invisible blade, a la Fate Stay Night Saber style, which might be what you're aiming for, I don't know. And again, to down is also good. And if you've got the space, you can also, you know, do like a, I'm gonna cut you kind of pose. But again, these are all that basic hand motion. You get that basic hand motion down, you get your triangle stance down, and then everything else comes from there. And also you can do relaxed poses as well. The key thing here, and this is the one that I always see people on Tumblr getting mad about, it cracks me up so much, is when you see people resting the blade on the shoulder, right? The key thing is you never put your blade on your shoulder, because that is painful. You put it on your nice, fleshy, meaty upper arm. That's where the blade rests, which I have actually done in this picture properly, so that's nice. So yeah, it's always gonna be on that upper arm. It's never gonna be here, because you have a nice clavicle bone here, and even the slightest hit to that is going to be painful and is going to break it. So yeah, always put it on that nice meaty part, or you can just pose with it in your belt. I'm a big fan of having weapons that I don't have to carry. I say having to carry around this giant bow all day. But yeah, if I can make it so that my weapon is literally just in my belt until I have to use it for pictures, I am much happier for it. Highly recommend. Oh, will the video work?
It might not work. No, it's a drag victim.
Oh, that's really sad. Okay.
Press Control and click, it should load separately.
It's going to go all the way to Google Drive, and I don't know if you'll have set the
That's not a problem, don't worry about it. This video was embedded, so I don't know what happened. That's fine. It's okay, don't worry about it. I had a video of me doing some very terrible Kenjutsu to demonstrate to everyone. Right, so yeah, let's talk about some Western swords, because we love anime that just kind of make up any kind of weapon that they love. Yeah, Western swords are going to tend to be one-handed until you get to the medieval period. There basically is no two-handed Western sword actually until like the Vikings? Yes. But they're all kind of generally the same, right? They're going to have blades on both sides. They're going to have a tapering point rather than a katana, which is going to have only a blade on one side. And you're going to have basically the same type of handle. So let's have a look at some Western stuff. Sword anatomy, that's what we like to see. The key thing for sword anatomy, why I have this in here, is because people forget that swords have tangs, right? Every bladed thing you will hold should have a tang in it, which is a piece of the metal that goes through the handle. And that is super important, because when you are making your props, give them tangs, because that will literally fix any stability issues that your blade will ever have, because that's why they were put there in the first place on metal blades, so that when your blade gets hit, it's not going to snap, because it's not attached to the handle goes over it. And that's the key thing here, is always put tangs on your weapons. You will love yourself, I promise you. was gonna say, if it's not working again, I'm gonna cry. So practicality versus appearance. Let's talk a bit about that. Right. We love ridiculous weapons, don't we? Kind of like our favorite thing. Transistor, it's literally, the transistor weapon is legitimately just a giant USB stick that talks to you. That's in the shape of a sword. Obviously, Cloud Strife is iconic. The Buster Sword is just, you know, ridiculous. And even things like Magic Knight Raya. Like, what is this massive sword supposed to be? Is it a Flamberg? Is it a straight Flamberg? Is that what's happening? Why is she holding a cavalry weapon? She's not on a horse. This is a disaster. And we love it, right? We love it. We want to look at these weapons. You look at this show and you go, I'm going to make that. It's garbage. It's ridiculous. I am 100% making this. But the thing is then you look at real sword fighting and actually it doesn't really work well for posing, right? This is a picture of me fencing épée, losing to an 11-year-old. I'm not ashamed. She was really good. It doesn't look very interesting, does it? Like, this is not like a cool dynamic but like fighting pose, but this is what real sword fighting looks like. So the idea is that you need to take proper sword fighting, sport fencing, kendo, kenjutsu, whatever you like, and make it in a way that's actually going to look dynamic, look good with what you want to do with your costume. So let's look at some fencing poses. Obviously, it's not. You go to a convention, someone's like, can I have a picture? And you're like, yeah, I'm ready to go. But lunges are great. If you've got a photographer you're working with, rather than doing a whole shot, getting into a lunge pose and then having your weapon somewhere is nice and dynamic, it looks good, and basically all forms of sword art are going to have some sort of lunging action. So that kind of thing, if you can do it in your costume, is going to look nice. Not necessarily the proper fencing lunge, because your blade is like, you know, all the way up there because you're going for a headshot, but getting that body pose in looks good, and it works. It works if you're being a character who actually understands how to use a sword. Why are you laughing at me?
Laughing at the little chicken.
Yeah, I do that. I always put my backhand in a little chicken face. It's just natural. I can't help it. And again, if you have a sword that's quite thin, because you're doing something like Revolutionary Girl Utano, which is, you know, fencing the anime but not, you need to make sure that kind of that blade's actually in front of you, because if you see on one side, you can see the blade, you can see that thin blade, but once it's to the side of me, it's very difficult to see if you have a busy background. So think about the actual shape of your blade. If you want it to be visible in a picture because you worked really hard on it, you want to make sure it's there, where do you need to put it so that it's visible? If it's a thin blade, you might need to actually put it in front of your costume so that it actually stands out against it. And then posing with longswords. Longsword is really difficult to pose with because if the blade is slightly to the side, you're doing it wrong. So as you can see with my friend Galina here, the blade is basically just not visible in 2 of these 3 photos. And also, she's put the blade on her clavicle. Oh, I'm gonna get her for this. But it's easy to fix, right? Turning the blade sideways once you're in a proper pose allows the blade to be seen. Yeah, someone's gonna look at it and be like, that's not how you hold it, but that's not the point. You're doing the proper pose, you're in character looking like you know what you're doing, and you're just changing it slightly so that the weapon is still visible. So this pose all the way to the right, if Kalina had just pointed the blade down slightly, she could keep the pose exactly the same, but you would actually see the entire length of the sword. Same thing for the one in the middle, pointing it further to the side would allow you to see the weapon, and for the one on the left, just moving it around so that the blade was flat and not pointed, you would get the same effect. And here we go, here are some other examples. So now she does have the blade flat, and you can see how that looks automatically better. You're actually seeing the weapon. The one on the far right is actually one of like the best poses you can do for cosplay when you have a weapon, because it's very dynamic. You can have 1 foot in front, 1 foot back. You can have almost a lunge pose with it, and you create like this really nice triangle with your face, the weapon, and your arms. So if you've got like a lot of upper body decoration on your cosplay, that one is a really, really good one to use as a pose. And photographers love that pose because if you've got a shiny sword, the sword will actually catch like rim light. So photographers will love you if you do that one, because you're basically acting as like another one of those giant shiny circle things for them. If they have lights, if they don't, they'll be like, why are you doing this? And then fighting. Actually trying to do fighting is really difficult in pictures, right? Because you need to make sure that every part of you is visible and every part of the weapon is visible, otherwise it's very hard narratively to see what you're doing. So in this picture, we've got an edge on edge, so our swords are hitting each other edge to edge, which is terrible for the weapons, but we just did it for the picture, the weapons are fine. And it's difficult to see the blades because they are edge facing the photographer in both cases. Whereas in the second pose, we basically clashed blades again, but we made sure that the flats of our blades were hitting each other, and there you can see them so much better. They actually look like weapons rather than, oh, hang on, I gotta squint. Oh, okay, yeah, I see the blades now. So just changing things like that. They're both proper poses, but one of them looks better in a picture, and that's the key thing here. It's you wanna look in character, but you also wanna make sure that the picture looks good. And then angles. Once you have your pose, your photographer can basically just go crazy. Because if you're in your pose and you are crossing weapons, which is always really good for posing, your photographer can go around, you can get it from different angles. But because it's those blades are down, that's what allows those angles to work. Because again, if they were up on their side, you still wouldn't be able to see them from that angle. So that's quite important. The Flamberg I'm holding there is difficult to demonstrate with this because it's wavy. So just from every angle, it looks garbage. But I really wanted to have the Flamberg for these pictures for some reason. But the longsword looks good. Let's appreciate the longsword and not look at the Flamberg. And then it's all about considering the weapon. Sheaths are great. Sheaths are fantastic. People should always make sheaths for their swords when they do costumes. And it's about just working out what your weapon is. So, you know, the traditional, I'm gonna put my blade over my shoulder, right? That's great, but if your weapon is edged on both sides, do you really want that next to your shoulder? Is that what you want? Because that's not what I want. But, you know, like, you got a machete there, right? There we go, you've got a machete. Machete's only gonna be bladed on one side, so perfect for resting on your shoulder. Same with the katana, because the katana is only gonna have one bladed edge. You can put that on your shoulder. And yeah, that's really the key part. Don't put the bladed edge next to your body. And the same thing with when you see people like holding part of the blade, right? Yes, there are medieval schools that will literally go in with a stab, grab the edge of the blade, and just go BAM! Mostly they do that because they're wearing giant ass gauntlets, right? So maybe if your character is wearing gauntlets, that would be really cool.
So this is our bed, sink, shower, and toilet. So it's very, very basic. And our TV. And this thing's the fucking brightest thing ever. Piece of shit. So, yeah. Just pack my bag and now I'm leaving. Oh, I made like a whole vlog of our trip.
You made a whole vlog?
Yeah.
I mean, my whole story.